It might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Satoshi Nakamoto. Welcome to What is Your Bitcoin Story, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating journeys of individuals who have embraced Bitcoin and explore the impact it has had on their lives. I'm your host, Gigi, and today we have an incredibly special guest joining us. Brian the Mint is a prominent voice in the Bitcoin community, known for his insightful perspectives and deep understanding of the Bitcoin landscape. As the head of marketing at Orangepill app, Brian has been at the forefront of spreading awareness and driving adoption of Bitcoin. He's also an author, having penned Bitcoin Evangelism, a book that breaks down complex concepts and makes Bitcoin accessible to everyone. Brian's latest book, The Parallel, The Bitcoin Social Layer, exploring the revolutionary impact of Bitcoin beyond its financial aspect, presenting it as a social movement capable of transforming global economic and governance structures. We will be exploring some of the concepts which are covered in this episode. And in addition to all of these achievements in the Bitcoin space, Brian is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, showcasing his dedication and discipline both on and off mat. His journey into the world of Bitcoin is nothing short of inspiring. From navigating the intricacies of marketing in the Bitcoin space to educating others on the profound implications of sound money, his story is a testament to the transformative power of Bitcoin. Join us as we uncover Brian's unique Bitcoin story, his experiences in the space, and his vision for the future of Bitcoin. It's a conversation you won't want to miss. And with that being said, welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me, man. That was a very generous introduction, but man, I appreciate it. I'm stoked to be here with you today.
Amazing. Well, I guess it makes the both of us. I'm really happy to have you on. As most people that follow the channel know, that I've been glued to your latest book, The Parallel. So I'd like to first of all congratulate you on the latest release of this masterpiece. And everybody listening to this episode, definitely I highly recommend everybody to go out and get their copy. Not just saying this because Brian's sitting here in front of me, but generally, honestly, from deep of my heart, it's a very compelling and a must read for everybody that's basically on their Bitcoin journey.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was certainly a fun book to write. And as we were talking off air, I mean, I was so blessed to have Knut Svanholm and Daniel Prince co-author. They each wrote a chapter of the book, and to have them participate in it and to have their voice. I mean, they really add. I mean, if you've read those chapters, they're very good. They're very compelling. They're very well thought out. I mean, they're top-notch Bitcoin authors for a reason. They have a beautiful way of articulating deep points, and some of it is there wasn't a question here, so sorry I'm not diving into this.
No, we can
I was just thinking about it because we were talking about it off air, and it's books are one of those things where so many books. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. So many books they have about 50 pages of good content, and then but they're 300 pages long, and they kind of drag on, and that's fine if you love the content, right? Because you want to go, and I think that's why we read is we want to go a mile deep into these topics. And so the really cool thing about having different voices kind of scattered throughout the book is that it really feels like you get 50 pages in, okay, that was kind of a new idea, and then you get a different voice. You get Knut's voice, right? And then you get a little break from that, and then me, and then it goes back to Daniel. And so you kind of feel like even reading through it as somebody myself, I get to be a fan of it because it's other people. It's not just my own work. I'm like, oh, this was a great time for Daniel to come in and kind of bring his perspective, because it's not just one voice repeating. And so I think that hopefully that's maybe even a model for other authors, and it's more of a conversation that way. And even some of the parts that I wrote or chapters I contributed, they're conversations I had with Robert Breedlove or Peter McCormick, which are very different voices in the Bitcoin space. And so it's even kind of like them authoring parts of the book. They don't get author credits, but they certainly get credits from the conversations that we had. So yes, you're definitely going to get a variety of voices and not just one voice that kind of drags on. And it's going to give you a depth of some of these ideas that I don't think that have been fully explored in Bitcoin yet.
For sure, and as you said, Brian, kind of it's like a mixture of flavors. It's not monotone. It's not kind of like this one perspective taking you from A to Z. It's kind of this aspect comes in, and then this point of view, and it's nice. And definitely, Daniel Prince's section on education I found fascinating because I have two young daughters, and I'm kind of, well, I'm in the kindergarten stage at the moment, but like soon we're gonna get to that, educational level, and we've been discussing and thinking with my wife about homeschooling and kind of, should we not, and kind of the more I read, and I got Daniel Prince's book also in BDC Prague, which talks about living with your family on the move, and how you can take education, as he calls it, world education, which I think is super important, because essentially our kids, which are these innocent, pure minds, not filling them up with stuff which was essentially designed to enslave them to be, as you mentioned in the book, the kind of the cog in the system to operate it, but give them the full freedom to pursue what they want to do in life. There was a lot of kind of life lessons that are eye-opening, and kind of reconsidering how I want to be a parent and raise my kids. So the book, definitely for those listening, does not just focus on Bitcoin and monetary aspect, but if you're also sharing being a young parent, it helps you on that basis as well, which is super important.
Yeah, and I think that's why Daniel is such an essential voice in the book. That what some of the best feedback we've gotten are things like that. Practical steps that people have taken since reading the book. We've had at least one gentleman that I know that started a business. He tweeted it out. He messaged me directly and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I finished the book. I filed an LLC, and we're underway. We're a business that accepts Bitcoin." And so to hear that people are reading Daniel's section and kind of reconsidering, and maybe it's something you guys were considering before, but if it gives you a little bit more fuel for that fire, same thing. If it's things that we can do, because the last chapter of the book, it looked like your bookmark was in the middle, so I don't think it doesn't look like
No, it's in the back. It's finished. No.
Oh, you did finish it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tell if it was in the middle, but yeah, the last chapter of the book, and sorry if I'm jumping on some of your questions, but the last chapter of the book is called "Every Day is Election Day," and it's not a political chapter. It's really trying to give just ideas and talking about different ways that we can chip away at the existing system, because there's really big thinkers out there. Like, I don't know if you guys, if your followers follow the G Money on
of course, G Money was, I believe, guest 6 or 7 on the pod. He was the first social Bitcoiner on the podcast. So yeah, we do follow G Money.
Okay, G Money, awesome. He reached out to me not that long ago, and I wasn't familiar with him. I mean, I think I'd seen him a few places, but he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want you to go watch my Robert Breedlove video about digital 1776 idea." And so then I got to go on a show, and I'm a viewer of his show now. I find it very compelling. His idea is very, very interesting. And I love it. It's kind of like game theory with what he's doing. And I think that's the difficulty of him. He's trying to knock that tree down and say, "Hey, let's disempower the system by stop paying your federal income tax and things like that." Now, that's fine. I think as an individual, the game theory problem is it's like prisoner's dilemma. Am I doing this and the other people aren't doing this? And so that's going to be, I think, the difficulty with that. But I love that there's voices out there really pushing. We're not just asking for 1%. He's asking for 100% buy-in. Yeah. But I think that every day is election day, that last chapter, it gives like incremental ways that we can chip away at that system, so that yes, there is a jumping off point where we can reach a critical mass. I think Bitcoin was the biggest push forward ever in this chipping away at the existing system. Now we have more tools. That's why we call the book the Bitcoin social layer. The social layer of Bitcoin is stronger than ever, and it's growing day by day. So there's more progress being made. But yeah, certainly the big of parallel is to find systematic ways or ways that you can integrate into your life to chip away from the existing system. Every transaction you make, whether it's actual financial transaction or it's a media transaction where you're connecting on social media, or what you're watching, what you're clicking on, every one of those things is a vote for either the status quo or for the parallel system, the new and emerging system. And so every time we take a vote away from the old system, it actually has the power of 2. It's a -1 from the old system, and it's a +1 for the new system. And so, yeah, that's the big of this book. And so having a voice like Canute who's able to talk about he really opens the book up about the social layer of Bitcoin. And then you have Daniel, who gives this really, really practical advice for parents and just even how the education system came to be and how to disempower it. And then we have, some other ideas there in the book as well. I think that it is a pretty broad stroke for Bitcoiners in any walk of life you're in. You might be a single guy with no wife, no kids or anything like that. But there's plenty of practical ideas in there for how you can participate in this revolution. There's something for everybody.
True. And actually, talking about the last chapter, I want to finish this episode by reading the last two paragraphs of the book, because I think it's a very impactful way that you close it. I hope it's not going to be a game killer for the guys. Still go out and read it, but the last two paragraphs are kind of like they're beating it in with making the right choices, because our attention is, I fully agree, it's the same currency. It doesn't matter if it's dollars, Bitcoin, Japanese yen, or your attention. It's all a currency. So yeah, make your choices right. But now let's bring it back to the beginning and let's ask Brian the big question. Where does your Bitcoin journey start, and how did you discover it, Brian? Going back to I don't know what year that would be. You tell us and take us on that journey.
Yeah, 2012 was the first time I heard of it. I always like to ask people, when was the first time that you disregarded Bitcoin, right? Well, it's like there's always like the time you disregarded it, which is like your big regret. For anybody that watched Michael Saylor's 21 Rules for Bitcoin speech in Prague, I mean, you probably saw it first.
I was there,
right? You were there. I just watched it. I'd seen clips of it. I finished watching it today, kind of in preparation for this show, just to have a little more to talk about. But yeah, he talks about you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. And so, yeah, I disregarded it in 2012, kind of heard about it in a stupid way. In 2013, had some entrepreneurial friends that I looked up to, guys that were a little bit older than me, a few years older than me. But when I started my business when I was 22. And so I was probably mid or late 20s by that time, because it was 2013. So I'm 38 right now, so people can do the math. So I was mid 20s, or it was about 10 years ago, so like later 20s. And so they were 11 years ago, yes. But yeah, they were buying Bitcoin and not really having good reasons for it. It was more number go up, but they could articulate the scarcity, like the 21. Oh, there's only 21 million, but they didn't have. I could tell that there was a bit of wavering in their conviction on it. It was more of like a stock pick to them, with a stock pick with a hard cap. Is about as good as they could articulate. And I remember being really disappointed. It's like, I look up to you guys. I come to you guys for advice on business and entrepreneurship, and here you guys are kind of going down this rabbit hole that makes you guys kind of sound dumb. And then I lobbed every accusation against Bitcoin that people do. I said tulip mania. I said Ponzi scheme, pyramid scheme, all those things. I thought I was really sophisticated for saying those. Clearly, I wasn't. But I tell people all the time, I tell Bitcoiners, because this is the first book I wrote, Bitcoin Evangelism, is really a book about trying to orange pill people and equipping Bitcoiners with like practical ways to orange pill people and to articulate it to kind of the everyday person and tailor your arguments, your points to them. Now, what I say in that book is, be super excited when somebody calls Bitcoin tulip mania or Ponzi scheme or any of those types of things, because that means they have a critical lens. They're not just accepting it they're not just accepting it because BlackRock has an ETF for it now, or every Bitcoiner is skeptical. So they're just Bitcoiners of tomorrow if they're skeptical about it today. That's a really good sign. And the good thing is, because we have answers and we have reasons for why Bitcoin isn't a pyramid scheme. We have reasons why, and the flip for me was trying to, I called it tulip mania, not really knowing what that was. These guys weren't able to explain it. But then once I started asking the questions about Bitcoin, and I started studying what tulip mania was, I was like, wow, okay, not only is Bitcoin not tulip mania, it's actually the fix for tulip mania. Like our money, our currency, our national currency is kind of what tulip mania was. It was like this rude awakening of, like, when I went down the rabbit hole and studied it just a little bit, I realized that our system is built on everything akin to tulip mania, and there's a ticking time bomb. Every Bitcoiner knows this now, but that was like the aha moment for me. And I started buying a little bit of Bitcoin, and then the light bulb really went off. I think for when the digital scarcity really made sense. I heard Andreas Antonopoulos talking to Joe Rogan about it on a podcast episode, and the way he articulated digital scarcity and how profound of an invention or a discovery that was by Satoshi Nakamoto. The way he described it was everything's going digital. There's nothing that was analog that's not either it hasn't gone digital or won't go digital eventually. The one holdout was money, because other things like music, when it went from analog CDs, records, and things like that, when it went digital MP3 formats, you had piracy of music, right? Music was able to have value because it was able to be contained. You could keep it finite to some degree, because it was a physical CD or it was a physical record. But once it went digital, people were able to copy and paste it endlessly, and so it became infinite. And the music industry was really disrupted for a very, very long time. And he said that, he made that akin to money. So that's the reason why until 2009, we could never have digital money, because digital money could just be copied and pasted endlessly. And that's really one of the profound discoveries of Satoshi Nakamoto, is solving that. We could, as Bitcoiners, we call it a double spend problem, but it's just this idea that people cannot infinitely create digital money. We found a way, humanity discovered a way to cap digital things. That's a really, really profound discovery. And that articulation of it, it just hit home for me. I had heard the idea of 21 million, and I heard the idea of the Byzantine general problem and double spend, but that framing of it really helped the light bulb go off for me. And so from 2014 on, I was buying. I wish I would have had a better dollar cost average strategy. I think I bought some and just kind of sat on it. But if I had, instead of trying, I tried to scrounge up as much money as I could get and then buy it all at one time, and it wasn't very much. If I had just invested $20 a month or certainly like $10 a week or something like that, I mean, the results would have been insane. But that was my journey, and it's one of I guess it's funny to say we have a lot of regret, but I don't have a lot of regret about not discovering it sooner, because I think that my journey of skepticism and coming out from that angle led to higher conviction. My skepticism, it led me to writing Bitcoin evangelism. Like, that's why I wrote a book that hopefully helps equip Bitcoiners with the deeper conviction to frame things in a certain way, the way Andreas Antonopoulos framed it for me and any other person that was listening. The framing of these arguments or these points can be the difference between changing somebody's life and the trajectory of their family for generations to come.
100%. I totally agree with you. It's, I'm a deep believer, Brian, that, everything happens for a reason, and kind of being at the right place at the right time with the right people or the right context in this case. Like if you would have gotten in earlier, maybe you would have dismissed it and kind of not gone down the route that you have. If you would have gotten in later, who knows what else could have happened. But going back to the Sailor quote, even though it's a little bit kind of like it's a bit raw and hard, but I stand by it. Kind of everybody deserves to get, Bitcoin at the price they deserve it at, kind of now seeing Wall Street at the beginning of the year with the ETFs being, kind of released, and then buying it at 40, 50, 60, 70,000. Like, it feels good that these big boys are paying big bucks for it, where, if they would have, not dismissed it as a Ponzi or terrorist financing, mechanism a few years ago, they could have been buying it for a few $100s or, low thousands, and now they're paying a lot more. And going to the talk that you mentioned, Brian, and everybody listening should definitely check out Michael Saylor's 21 Bitcoin Lessons, where he talks about, in the future, there's going to be this hedge fund managers that are going to be like, oh, 900,000 is too much for Bitcoin. I'll wait for the 700 dip. And then they're going to be buying it at 8 million. And I truly believe that is going to happen. Because once again, going to the scarcity aspect. So, Brian, I had the same kind of, my light bulb moment was this finite scarcity, where especially digitally, we have infinite of everything. And hence the fiat system that we operate by, central banks, they infinitely print money. It doesn't matter if you're in the US, if you're in the UK, if you're in Japan, if you're in Sweden, wherever you are, the central bank just goes boop, boop, puts a few numbers in their ledger, and bam, you have this instant infinite amount of money. And with Bitcoin, having 21 million, not just digitally but physically also, there's nothing physically that's finite. Even gold that people think is the safest bet and kind of best savings vehicle, every year there's more and more of it being mined away. And nobody really knows how much gold there is. And who knows, maybe there's a lot more gold than is disclosed to us. So like the big markets, they like to be manipulated and kind of corrupted. Bitcoin truly is the only scarce digital and physical item that we have, because it's kind of this item that we had a talk, I believe it was with Ioanni Appelberg, where we talked about kind of Bitcoin doesn't exist yet. It's the most kind of it's the asset class that's worth the most without being existent in the physical realm, and to most people it's really hard to comprehend it, like, because a lot of people tell me, kind of, but what gives Bitcoin the value? Like, I have these conversations still, like the taxi drive from Prague to the airport. I was speaking to the taxi driver. He turned out to be a fellow Serb, because natively I'm from Serbia, and he was like, tell me about this Bitcoin. Where's the value come from? And I went down 10 in the basics, 21 million, scarcity, mining, and everything. And he was like, yeah, but I still don't get it. He's like it's worth nothing. And I go, well, those kronas in your pocket, they're worth nothing, right? But the Bitcoin actually is the one that's worth the most. And I guess it's a learning curve, and because Bitcoin is this new paradigm shift that you really need to rethink everything that you've been taught. And once you go deeper into Bitcoin, you start questioning everything. It's definitely a journey that there is no returning back out of it. And a lot of people, they first of all are sleepers, and second of all, they're dismissive of it. They're so like in the matrix. They're so in believers in the current system that we have, that they disregard anything that could be closely telling them that everything's a lie, and that actually on the other side the grass is really greener. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing. But I want to ask you now another question, which I mentioned, and I'm a big fan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself. I'm a pleb in the Jiu-Jitsu world. So I only started training a year ago. So I'm only a white belt with 2 stripes, but I'm working my way towards the blue and the purple, as I hear that the hardest step is getting to the blue, because 95% of people never make it to the blue. But yourself being a black belt, and kind of, how has kind of your discipline that you've acquired through BJJ influenced your approach to working in the Bitcoin space? Are there any parallels that you can compare, or
yeah, absolutely.
How do you see the two worlds?
Absolutely. And first of all, I mean, yeah, I think black belt, because of what it means and all that kind of stuff, and it takes so long to get to, and
a decade.
I would say, yeah, for me it was a decade. And that's from the first time I stepped on the mats was probably 14 years, but it was 10 years of okay,
dedication.
I'm training jiu-jitsu 5 to 7 times a week. I maybe dabbled in it before, because I did other martial arts like kickboxing. So every once in a while you'd grapple after practice. But so I'd stepped on the jiu-jitsu mats before, but it was 14 years, but 10 years of hardcore training. And so black belt was probably the most satisfying. But blue belt was a close second. I mean, I remember the first time you get upgraded. Because I'd never even gotten a stripe on my white belt, actually.
Wow.
I had done no gi. So for people in the audience who don't know, you can do it with the gi on, which is like the pajama looking things, or you can just do it in athletic clothes, and that's called no gi. There's 2 forms of it. You can compete in 2 different forms. My school, Checkmat, is a pretty prominent school around the world, and so we have kind of a traditional twinge to it. My coach would not promote anybody if they only did no-gi, but the classes that I went to, because I was competing in MMA, I didn't think that the gi really was relevant at the time. So when early on in your jiu-jitsu journey, people say things like, oh, I don't really care about the belts. No, everybody says that at the beginning because they haven't gotten promoted yet. But once you start to get into it a little bit, you realize that the belts do kind of mean something. It's an objective kind of, or maybe it's a subjective thing of your coach, but it's somebody that has a really high somebody that you really care about, what they think about your progress, somebody that's analyzing and auditing your progress, they're giving you kind of an outside objective mark in terms of this belt that means something. So the blue belt is a very satisfying belt to get to. And I think that's why so many people quit a blue belt, because it is so satisfying. It's like, I have achieved something. The most jiu-jitsu gyms will say you can get to blue belt, or you're qualified as a blue belt, if you can defeat or defend yourself against a larger, stronger, untrained opponent. That's typically what most gyms will kind of mark a blue belt as. And so if you're a 150-pound man, you can probably defend yourself against a 250-pound man that hasn't gotten much training. Maybe perhaps he's very strong, perhaps he's very athletic, but you'll be able to subdue and defeat somebody like that. That's kind of the mark of a blue belt. So I think a lot of people think like, okay, well, that's good enough for me as far as for self-defense, and so I don't have to do it anymore. And that's really unfortunate. And I think one of the parallels, though, as the way you frame that question, it's really good. What are the parallels to Bitcoin? Jiu-jitsu people say this all the time. It's the proof of work, right? That's what the belt system kind of indicates, is that you've put in time. When I meet somebody that's a 2-stripe white belt, to the outside world, they're like, that sounds kind of weak. You got a white belt, haha, 2 stripes. I know how much pain and triumph and discouragement and the highs you've had to get a single stripe on your belt.
Experiencing.
Yeah.
There's nothing like getting choked out at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning.
Exactly. I know the route that you've taken to get there. So there is a level of respect. And I know that there's a proof of work that comes with that. And jiu-jitsu is very unlike a lot of other martial arts because of that. I have kids come up. I was just at my kids' summer camp, and it went around the kids, these are 5th and 6th graders. It went around that Daniel and Presley's dad is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So I had all these kids coming up to me telling me they were black belts in Taekwondo or karate, which are beautiful arts, but those arts, they don't run you through the same gamut. And I would ask them, these are 5th graders, and I would say, how long did it take you? Oh, it took me 1.5 years to get my black belt. And I said, do you still train? He said, I don't train because I learned everything. And I was like, that's just completely, it's like the antithesis of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is about. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you get the black belt, and every black belt will tell you, my journey's just beginning, right? I have a world of things to understand still at this point. And the one last thing I'll say about the parallels in the belt system, most people don't know this, but the belt system, it is really kind of a recent development in the history of Jiu-Jitsu. It used to just be that everybody had a white belt. And then at one point you had where like some of the professors would wear a blue belt. That was the only distinguishing factor. But the reason why you had kind of this belt system and the colors that we have them, it's really, if you look at it in Jiu-Jitsu, it goes from white to blue to purple to brown to black. Yeah. The colors darken as you go. The reason why it's darkening of colors is because it's this homage to the idea that everybody used to have a white belt, but there were guys that you didn't wash it. And you trained for so long that the darker the guy's belt got, you all had the same belt, but you knew if that guy had a really tattered dark belt, that he probably has been training for a really long time. And if his belt was black because it was so dirty and so gross and it was so blood stained, and because blood, when it gets into your clothing, it blackens it, right? And so he's literally put blood, sweat, and tears into this belt, and it's become black. It was actually a white belt, but it became black because he'd been doing it for so long. So that's why the Jiu-Jitsu belts are colored the way that they are, darker and darker as you progress. It's because it's this homage to literally proof of work. It wasn't an outside sign. It was just, you could see by somebody's clothing that they had put in this incredible amount of work into this craft. And, you could see it just from looking at their belt, but certainly if you'd stepped on the mats and tried to roll with them, you would have found out as well.
No, amazing. And I never, that comparison that you did, the parallel with the proof of work kind of, there is no fast way to get your next belt or to get to purple or to brown or to black. You need to put in the work and time into it, blood, sweat, and tears, as you mentioned, Brian. And the same thing is in Bitcoin, right? There's nobody that just reads, one book, the Bitcoin Standard, and it's like, woof, I see it all. And next thing they're setting up their nodes and opening lightning channels. And kind of, it takes a lot of time for you to kind of digest everything, work it through, and kind of, find your pathway through. And kind of, I also think it takes even longer for people to really understand the power of Bitcoin and take it seriously, is because we have this whole universe of shitcoinery that's kind of like just all this fog and noise, and people are putting Bitcoin into this whole, cryptocurrency, saga. Oh, it's up today, it's down tomorrow, this volatile asset backed by nothing. As I mentioned, I get people telling me all the time, Bitcoin's not backed by anything, and, I have to take them back to the basics. I think that's what makes it even harder for people to kind of first differentiate it. And a lot of people, I don't know how about yourself, for you, Brian, but I got into the space in mid 2017 in the whole ICO phase. And to me, it took me like good nearly 3 years to differentiate Bitcoin and all other cryptos. And there's some people today, like 5-6 years later, who essentially more or less started the journey with me, and they still see Bitcoin the same as Ethereum and Solana and all those, thousands of tokens, where it's like, man, like, how many times you need to get rugged to like really, understand that this is not a digital form of fiat. It's a true new parallel dimension, and this whole new world that we're building out there, and not just a token that's waiting for the next, airdrop or whatnot, or staking protocol to give you some free, true magic internet money, not Bitcoin as some people call it, internet magic money. So what do you think on that, Brian? Kind of.
Well, there's a couple things you said there. So one thing to kind of connect it back to what we were just talking about with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you mentioned Bitcoin's volatility and where people, they get confused by the volatility, and that's the volatility of Bitcoin is like one of the things that's similar to crypto, right? Is crypto is volatile and Bitcoin is volatile. Even though Bitcoin's less volatile than these altcoins, they say, oh, it's all volatile, right? It's more volatile than gold, so they're all lumped into the same category. Now, volatility is one of the things that is kind of endemic to Bitcoin right now, because of the fact that it's a new asset class. I had a hedge fund manager reach out to me the other day, and he said he's read Bitcoin Evangelism. He's working on Parallel right now, which is really cool to see. This fund actually bought after they read this is maybe the biggest contribution I've made to Bitcoin. The fund has since bought $80 million of Bitcoin after reading Bitcoin Evangelism. So I know a few people that have bought Bitcoin because of the book, but just to like know that one fund bought a significant amount. But so he said, he'll text me every once in a while, and he'll say, oh, I have people asking the problem of volatility with Bitcoin. And I say, and he's talking to traditional investors. He said, how do I answer this problem? And I tell him, I said, well, look back to Amazon. Look at the historical charts. If you want to talk, and this is kind of the more Bitcoin evangelism type stuff. Yeah, you look back to, if you're talking to a traditional investor, look back to the early days. Amazon had 80% drawdowns.
Yeah.
But look at who were the only people that held Amazon stock from the beginning. It was Jeff Bezos and his family. And they were the most richly rewarded from that experience. Whether you think Amazon's great or not, the fact of the matter is it was very volatile because it was young, but it was revolutionary, and it changed e-commerce, and now it's a relatively stable one. Obviously, it can still fluctuate and stuff, but it's nowhere near the volatility of what it used to be. And so, I think that volatility is something that we as Bitcoiners learn to deal with. And this is what I'll say is as far as how it equates to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm sure you felt this exact same thing. But with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a roller coaster ride of how good you think you are. There's days when you go on the mats and you're like, wow, everything's flowing, everything's working. I feel like I can beat anybody in the world. And then there's other days where you feel absolutely terrible. You feel like you suck. You don't know why you ever started doing this. You feel like an idiot. I've been training for 7 years longer than that guy, and that guy just tapped me out, or he swept me, or he mounted me, or whatever it is. And that shouldn't have happened. And yet I feel like garbage today. And then 2 weeks later, I feel like a world beater again. And then you're just in these peaks and valleys in your journey. And the reality is you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. Really what's happening is you're just kind of slowly progressing like this.
And the wave.
And it's always a slight upward trajectory. Yeah, but it's zigzagging all along the way, but it's just like a Bitcoin chart. It's like the Bitcoin power law. Like I met the Bitcoin power law guy actually at a meetup through orangepill app the other day. It was pretty cool. I was just sitting at the table And I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied it, so I don't understand whether it's valid or not. But it's just, I thought it was funny that he's just sitting at a table and he's literally showing me a piece of paper explaining the power law. But it maps this consistent progression along volatility. So I think that that's one of the inherent strengths of Bitcoiners. Excuse me, as of jujitsu guys that come over into Bitcoin. There's a lot of jujitsu guys in Bitcoin because you're trained to deal with that volatility of feeling great and feeling like garbage. And over time, you start to recognize the cycles. You start to realize, like, oh yeah, I remember feeling like garbage before. And I also remember, like, a little while after that, I felt great. So just understanding that that's the cycles. You've been in Bitcoin since 2017. We've been through a few bull runs and a few bear cycles. So I don't get the euphoria that I used to get at the top. It still feels good when the Bitcoin buying power is up, but I definitely don't feel anywhere near as bad in the bottoms. And again, I think most Bitcoiners
I feel
have learned.
happy because
Yeah, I
Bitcoin's
think
on discount.
we've trained ourselves to learn. And I would say that that's the same thing where
Sure.
in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you can force yourself to go in and train on the days where you feel like garbage, you will have the most progress on those days. You just will. You'll learn something new. You'll learn something new about yourself. You'll recognize that, wow, even when I feel like I suck, there's certain basics I can stick to that will still always work. I can continue. If I focus on my defense, if I keep my hands in and my chin down, I can defend against a whole lot of things. And so it's the same thing with Bitcoin. The best times to be in it are when you feel dumb and you feel foolish and you feel like your investment strategy didn't work out. But if you have some true conviction and deep principles, then, like you said, that those are the best times, and that's where the most progress is made. And I think that crypto doesn't quite get that. Those people don't have that same level of conviction. So crypto gets burnout. And I think that's one of the things that I really tried to touch on a lot in Bitcoin evangelism. I worked in crypto. I worked for a blockchain project for a few years in 2017, 2018, 2019. And I could tell you guys stories about, I came back to Bitcoin only stands for a
Horror
reason.
stories. No horror stories. There might be some children listening, Brian.
Yeah. I could tell some terrible stories. But Bitcoin evangelism, I really, in the center of that book, in the middle of that book, I touch on altcoins. I talk about what they are. I talk about it's for a Bitcoin only book. It's probably the gentlest book towards altcoiners because I talk about why people are fascinated with them and then ultimately why somebody should come back to a Bitcoin only stance. So I think a lot of us had to go through a crypto phase. I hope that new Bitcoiners can read a book like Bitcoin Evangelism and go through that altcoin phase while they read the book and not actually experience it. Because I think a lot of times Bitcoiners, we just try not to talk about it because we kibosh it because we understand that it's trouble or we understand that we went through it. But I think the crypto people believe that Bitcoiners don't really understand what crypto is all about. They think that we're narrow-minded or something. It's like
cult believers.
Exactly. It's like we understand what crypto is. And I think so that's the power of that in the book is saying here, I understand exactly what you're talking about, but here's ultimately why this doesn't work and why this is a problem. And I don't get bummed out by the crypto market being so big because I do see the crypto market as low-hanging fruit for future Bitcoin maxis. Again, you were there, I was there. I believe that, man, if we could turn every crypto holder into a Bitcoin maxi, I think that we could really do some damage to the existing status quo.
No, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a free market, free world, right? So if people want to go gamble away, there's plenty of tokens that, and meme coins, which are the hype of these days. But like, I don't know, like, I think we have generally in the world, there's a lot of gambling stuff, maybe casino people or maybe people swiping different, phone casinos. And then they just see crypto as this other next, I might get rich, this kind of dopamine hit, buying this token, waiting for is it gonna pop? Is it gonna crash? But, I tell people, if you like gambling, stick to the casino because at least you get free drinks and beautiful girls there. In crypto, you're gonna get none of that. You're gonna put your hard-earned money in, and you're gonna be left butt naked, and there's no free drinks and no beautiful girls.
The girls aren't beautiful.
No, and the girls that might be DMing you might not be the girls. They might be some dude on the other side of the world in a hot room. But yeah, I don't want to go off tangent. I think it was nice that we nicely touched upon alt. Other guests like to bash them as shit coins and whatnot, and it's all gone. But I'm a person who's never gonna tell you, don't do it. If it's kind of that, I don't know if you've seen that parenting meme. When the child's about to put his finger in the wall socket of electricity, and the wife's like, "Oh no!" Like to the husband, like, "Stop him!" And then the husband just sitting on the couch going, "No, no, no, let him learn." And I'm the same way, kind of. If you want to
Yeah.
dabble and see if it's good, give it a go. But hopefully you'll come back, as you said, Brian. You will join the Orange Tribe and kind of join the freedom fighters and not the gamble fighters. So I think from this perspective and where the conversation's going, I want to touch upon actually one of the first points from the book that I wanted to bring up, and I'll give once again credit to the guy who came up with the term, which is Peter McCormack, and the cheat code. And they recently had their first conference in the UK in what's his name? Not Bristol. What's McCormack City called? Bedford. Yeah, I don't know why I had I mixed it with Bristol, but anyway, with Bedford. Cheat code, which I find it fascinating, and I wanted to hear a little bit more of your perspective, and guess the listeners who haven't read the book or are living under the rock and have never listened to what Bitcoin did and Peter's podcast talking about the cheat code. Essentially, in two words, it's essentially Bitcoin companies adopting the Bitcoin, not even the standard, but just putting some Bitcoin on their treasury. It's kind of this cheat code where it brings so much, kind of further investment and growth into the company. But I want to hear from your perspective and kind of more on the aspect of cheat code, which you go into some lengths in your book.
Yeah, and so that chapter, which Peter was kind enough to allow us to name the book. I mean, I guess we could have done it anyways. He doesn't even claim creating it. I think somewhere in the book we mentioned how he got it from somebody else, but he really popularized the term.
Yeah.
And same thing with I forget the number of the chapter, but the chapter on counter propaganda we called tweets.
I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, thank you. It's the title is "Tweets are the bullets and memes are the artillery." The Simply
Chapter
Bitcoin
6.
guys. Chapter 6. There you go. And so that was named, that we got that from Simply Bitcoin. If anybody watches that show, they consistently talk about it like that.
Shout out to Nico.
Shout out to Nico. And it's fun to be able to use these kind of memes or these terms or whatever, but they really, like, a meme speaks 1,000 words, or if a picture speaks 1,000 words, a meme maybe speaks 1,000,000 words. And so, yes, I think this idea of the cheat code is a pretty profound idea. And I love that Peter calls his conference the cheat code, because yes, it's a way to add some hot sauce or whatever you want to call it to the rest of your life. And so if you are, say, a plumber, you're going to have access to a certain amount of customers anyways. Just if you accept fiat, it's within your sphere. If I'm a local plumber, then maybe my radius is 30 miles. Maybe people from 30 miles around will want to do business with me because I can drive out to there. But beyond that, that's not, business that people are searching me out. I might not come up on their Google searches or anything like that. I might be willing to drive 50 miles or 60 miles for a job. But people really aren't going to be finding me probably beyond 15 or 20 miles, to be honest. Because things are so hyper localized when it comes to services and stuff now, because there's such competition for it. But when you're the Bitcoin plumber, for example, you're not only is your demographic that existing fiat demographic, but you'll now have people who will want to transact with you because you transact in Bitcoin or you accept Bitcoin. You'll have Bitcoiners that will want to fuel, like somebody like myself. I search out and I'm driving tomorrow. I'm driving for a haircut with my barber. It's 35 miles. I've never driven 35 miles for a haircut before, but just because I can pay in Bitcoin, my barber is getting business that's 3 cities away or 4 cities away. I have to drive through 4 cities in Southern California, so it's lots of traffic. It's not just 35 miles. Yeah. It's probably going to be an hour plus of driving each way.
A lot of proof of time right there.
Proof of, exactly. And this, whether you're the plumber or you're the barber, it adds extra business of people, high signal individuals that have increasing buying power. And the cheat code, it's kind of a cheat code right now, but the cheat code over time is going to be pretty profound, because you think about it. 5 years from now, is the dollar going to have better buying power or worse buying power? Like, we know exactly, like, it's going to have worse buying power 5 years from now. Five years from now, is Bitcoin going to have higher buying power or lower buying power? That split is going to become more apparent to every single person in society. And so what are businesses, when we're in an environment where the dollar is just trashed by another 5 years, or whatever your local currency is, it's trashed for another 5 years, which it's not getting better. It's just going to get progressively and compoundingly worse. And Bitcoin is just going to get better and better and better. What customers do you want? You want Bitcoin customers, because those are the people that have the most buying power. They have the most sustainability, and those customers aren't just going to be one-off customers. They're going to be customers that have repetitive buying power. And so it gives you an unfair advantage against your fiat competition. If you're a barber, if you're a plumber, if you're a programmer,
Any business.
any business that you have, anything, because whatever you do, somebody pays you fiat for it.
Yeah.
Somebody will pay you Bitcoin for it as well. And so if you get X amount of customers in fiat, you will get X plus Y because of the Bitcoin component of it. So you're adding a new vector of customers that you just would not have had. If I say I'm a Bitcoiner, but all I accept is fiat, I might actually, the cheat code might still apply. There might be people that want to support a Bitcoiner even in fiat, just because they understand that, okay, that person's a Bitcoiner, so maybe they'll use some of it to save in Bitcoin or whatever. But when you tell people I'm physically accepting Bitcoin, then think about how this progresses. Because I think a lot of people that have read the book, their feedback is, oh, you ask people to spend, but that's just going to turn into sell orders, because businesses are going to accept Bitcoin and then turn around and sell it. That might be true to some point. Now, when my business,
but not everyone.
My business accepts Bitcoin, and we don't get so much that we have to sell it. So we actually just stack those sats when we get it. But let's say that businesses do right now. But guess what? Every new business or every new person that comes online that accepts Bitcoin, we get one step closer to those businesses who accept Bitcoin. They will now have more places that they can spend it. Because why would a business need to spend it? I would need to spend my Bitcoin so that I can buy paper towels for the bathroom at my wellness center, right? Or I need to sell that Bitcoin to buy supplies for the front desk area. But what if whoever sells paper towels starts accepting Bitcoin, or the company that sells supplies for my front desk starts accepting Bitcoin? I no longer have to get out of Bitcoin in order to use that Bitcoin for something else. So every person that comes online for that is one step closer to this idea of hyper Bitcoinization. And so the cheat code, it's kind of helpful right now. And for some people, it's really helpful, like Peter McCormick. Or we analyze it at three levels: the private business, the publicly. So Peter McCormick's soccer club is a private business. It's immensely helped his soccer club, and we go into detail as far as to how. A publicly traded company like MicroStrategy, he's been able to outperform the rest of the market because of their Bitcoin strategy. They were always a cash flow positive business, but you never heard of MicroStrategy until they adopted a Bitcoin standard. And then we analyzed a sovereign nation. What is El Salvador? El Salvador's outcompeted anybody that was similar to them in their geographic location, or any country of a similar size or anything like that. They've outperformed every one of those comparison countries. And so whether it's a private business, a public company, or a sovereign nation, adding a Bitcoin dimension to your operations allows you to outperform. That's the cheat code. Because everybody else is doing X, you get to do X plus Y. And maybe Y is big, maybe Y is small, but it's more than X. And that's the fact of the matter. And again, as more people do that, then Y becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to when you plug into that.
100%. And to touch upon El Salvador, they're still sticking by the guns and DCAing one Bitcoin every day. And you don't have to trust them. You can check it on chain. It's all open. So I totally agree. And going to the second factor of public companies, I'm sure you've been seeing, Brian, in the last 48 hours with Michael Dell, posting his Cookie Monster eating Bitcoins. Kind of everybody's waiting. What's this next big company coming in that's going to be stacking Bitcoin? But I think sooner or later, it's kind of same way as Bukele did with El Salvador, and I truly believe most of Latin America and even most parts of Africa are closely kind of monitoring and seeing, like, let's see what will happen to it. And now like 2-3 years later, they're like, holy shit, they're like doing much better than the rest of us. So it's like, who's going to be next? The same thing's happening in the second boot camp with the public companies. They're kind of, they can't ignore MicroStrategy anymore. They're like, wow, like the stock value and looking at stock price, with MSRT, what's been happening is crazy. That's been growing faster than Bitcoin. So like a lot of companies, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And this cheat code, as you mentioned, Brian, it's kind of, it's not going to last here forever. You have this, 5, maybe maximum 10-year gap to really milk the fruits of, being unique in your sector, maybe a company, a service provider where you're kind of really standing out from the crowd and taking all this kind of Bitcoin support and love from people. Because in the future, once, 70% of businesses accept Bitcoin, then Bitcoiners kind of have this abundance of choice, like, oh, I can go anywhere now and spend my sats. But now if you're offering a service, like I've recently moved, I've relocated. I moved out of Europe 3 months ago, and I live in St. Petersburg, Russia. And here, there's 2 merchants in a city of 7 million people, and there's 2 merchants. One's a dentist, and the other one's a streetwear brand shop, and that's it. There's no acceptance of Bitcoin. And I'm like slowly, from my barber, every time I go get my haircut, I'm slowly, drip feeding him about Bitcoin. On my next visit, which is happening the following week, I'm finally gonna zap him some Bitcoin on Lightning, because instead of just giving people Bitcoin, I like to, slowly. I have my own term, which I actually got from Ben DeWall. He doesn't actually like the term orange pilling, because he doesn't believe someone takes a pill and everything changes. He likes to call it orange seeding, right? Because you plant a seed and then you got to come back and water that seed. And then slowly, the stem grows out and then the beautiful flower comes out. So I planted that seed once I met my barber here. And every time I go, every 3 weeks, I'm slowly watering that plant. And my goal is to actually get through to the owner who has, they have changed, they're like a, this franchise barbershop, but they have these barbershops all over the city, all over the country, sorry. And they're a pretty big business. So like, instead of trying to orange pill a small one, I'm going for the big fruit, and I'm trying to, orange pill or orange seed the big boys, and get them to be the first barbers, franchise in the country to be offering Bitcoin payments. And there's different incentives that, they could look at, give a 10%, a further incentive, not just getting, because I don't know how many Bitcoiners there are in Russia, but if you give them a discount, everybody loves a discount, and like cashback is a big thing in this country. So if you give them, a 10-15% discount for a haircut if they pay in Bitcoin, a lot of people will be, and it's very easy. The on and off ramps in this country, surprisingly, are much easier than in Europe. So people can, within 15 minutes, get some sats and get a discount on their haircut. But the beautiful thing is, they get to interact through it. And then as a business owner, it makes a lot of sense to give them, even if it's 20% discount, by stacking those sats and holding them long term. They don't need the fiat. The fiat's still rolling in by heaps, but like stacking those sats is a huge bonus for them, and they could really be a differentiator. So I'm kind of trying from the barbershop aspect, and there's many other businesses that could go into it. But definitely this book gave me also a lot of other ideas that could be transcended. This takes me to the next part of the book, which I wanted to bring up, and a quote I particularly love. And it goes, "You may not have been early to Bitcoin, but you're early to a parallel Bitcoin economy." And this also trickles back to what we talked about, Brian, the timing aspect, right? So if you got into Bitcoin, everybody, wish they got into Bitcoin when it was a few cents, but maybe you wouldn't have taken it seriously, and you would have a very different story. But I truly believe that today, in the current day of time where we are with Bitcoin, kind of 15 years since Genesis block came to be, in my eyes, I might be wrong, but my personal opinion is we're at the optimal time, because we have this proof of concept for 15 years. There's so many businesses that are flourishing and being built as we speak. There's so many things still yet and more to build upon and problems to solve. There's so many Bitcoiners around the world that are willing to collaborate, help out each other. There's so many big Bitcoin-only conferences, BTC Prague being one of them, but I mean, Baltic Honey Badger, the adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, Bitcoin Atlantis in Madeira. There's so many amazing grassroots communities being built that right now it's kind of your prime time to get into the space. And I think you talk, kind of your book, The Parallel, is a perfect testament to it. Instead of fighting the system and being rebellious, forget it. You're not going to end the system. The system's there, but build your own little free system. A system which you and your family and your social peers can grow and have a fruitful future, compared to dabbling on, oh, I don't like how the politics are, I don't like how inflation is, I don't like how that is. So yeah, it's kind of that's the perspective I love about the book that you mentioned, being early to the parallel Bitcoin economy.
Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things where I hope that that's an encouragement to people, but I also use it. There's I maybe use it like in a negative way too when I get frustrated in a conversation, because I'll talk to people that are Bitcoiners, and they're hodlers, and I would never spend my Bitcoin, or I'd never spend Sats, and it's like, hey man, there's a lot of options you can spend and replace. I'm not saying to take away from your stack. Like I'm not trying to diminish the store of value, transformative wealth and stuff like that. But and to participate in the parallel economy, you don't even have to spend Sats. You just can start accepting Sats. Like be one end of it, and then that only is going to help your stacking ability. But I tell people too, it's like, you know what, if you're passing up this opportunity to participate, if somebody's in Bitcoin and they're just buying the ETF and they're just holding that, or even I would say if somebody buys and they put it in self custody, that's fine. Like you're outperforming what the rest of the world is going to do, and you're better off for having done it. But if you're mission driven about Bitcoin becoming a global standard, just keep in mind that if we fail to participate in helping to build that system, again, those actions can be really, really small. It can be, contributing through Lightning Ventures and investing in a Bitcoin startup, or going to Geyser Fund and just sprinkling a few Sats to help a Bitcoin initiative. There's a million different ways you can do it. It's not all like a huge sacrifice. Like the revolutions of the past were fought with bloody battles. Our revolution is getting on and making memes and
reading books,
a few Sats and reading books. Like our revolution is
super
much
peaceful,
easier. It's very peaceful. But I think that a lot of people are going to look back 10 years from now, and they're going to say, man, I really should have participated in the Bitcoin economy, just in the same way that they disregarded Bitcoin early on and then later ended up buying into it. I think a lot of people are disregarding the parallel system. And I mentioned this, I think I mentioned in the book. I certainly mentioned it in podcasts. But you think about the two types of people that benefited from the internet economy. There's people who bought domains and they bought internet company stocks, and some of those people did really well, right? If they, even though there was a crash in 1999, if they held the stock for long enough, they ended up benefiting from it. There was people who bought domains and then turned around and sold those domains for $5 million. I mean, people got rich off of it, right? They became millionaires because of it. But then there were other people. There were people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, people like that. Again, whether you think they're great people or not, the fact of the matter is they didn't just buy and hold internet stocks. They helped build the internet economy. And the amount of wealth, the amount of benefit between them and the person who just bought and held internet stocks and domains and stuff like that, they both became rich. But one type of person became vastly wealthy. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth versus millions of dollars. Both people benefited greatly, but the rising tide really seems to help and benefit those who contribute to that economy. Because think about it, if you're starting to exchange Sats, whether you're accepting Sats or you're spending Sats, and you're already part of that internet economy or that Bitcoin economy, as that economy grows, who are people going to come to spend their Sats? They're going to come to you first because they've been doing business with you for longer. And so that, I think that cheat code, like we said, there's maybe a point of diminishing effect, but the network connections you have with people are going to be the cheat code of the future. It's how many Bitcoiners did you connect with? Because if you're known as an old school Bitcoiner, you're going to have just a little bit more clout. And I don't mean an old school Bitcoiner and like I was there in 2009 and I mined, the first block. It's like I was there at the beginning of the parallel system, and people remember doing business with me 10 years ago when it wasn't cool to do it. And so I think that those type of people are going to benefit the most from it. And again, the buy into that, the sacrifice you have to make to that, is so low, and honestly, it's kind of fun. And so I highly suggest that people don't pass up this opportunity in the same way that they passed up holding Bitcoin in the past. And one thing I can't pass it up because you mentioned that your friend likes to call it orange seeding, but the cover of the book
Is a plant.
is a plant, and the subtitle is "Planting Seeds for the Decentralized Revolution." So I absolutely now. I can't bash Orange Pill because I do like the term Orange Pill as well.
And you're sitting on the board, so it'd be a little bit hypocritical.
I would be a little hypocritical, but I think that those terms are both good, because I think the pill idea is this idea that your eyes are open. So when you take the orange pill, you haven't solved everything, but at least your eyes are open to the way that the world works and money works and stuff like that. But yes, I think that this idea of the orange seed and having to water it really emotes this idea that there's work to be done, right? It's not just that we handed something to somebody, we handed somebody a book and the work is done. It does, like you said, it takes going to your barber and having a few talks with them, and then, spending a little Bitcoin with them. And I think the reason why I think Bitcoiners, we talk about barbers so much, I think that that's such a good person to orange pill, because
they're the best because they speak to everybody. How many clients every day?
Everybody. Their influence in the community is amazing, and it's so easy. It's such low-hanging fruit for them to accept Bitcoin. So, I mean, I don't need to wax poetic on that anymore. But yeah, man, I think that's an easy way to orange pill somebody, or it's a good person, a high signal person to orange pill.
And to add to it, with the barbers, why they're such amazing, people to really get onto the orange side of the world is because they have tons of customers, and they're recurring ones. They're not like taxi drivers where you talk to a taxi driver on your commute for 10, 15 minutes and you'll never see him again.
Yes.
But the clients keep coming back, and then they're like, oh, I discovered this, and oh, I started accepting, Bitcoin for this. And it's like, oh, wow. And it just it's compounding of information. So yeah, that's kind of my game strategy to go at it. But I want to now bring up another point, talking about building these Bitcoin parallels and being early in the Bitcoin economy, which I think is super important for all listeners listening to this episode, is to go out there and meet fellow Bitcoiners, or companies that you've been looking up to, or people that you've been following in the space, by attending these Bitcoin only conferences. Because I've just, as off the record, I told Brian I just came off of BTC Prague. It hasn't even been 2 weeks, and I'm still buzzing from all the new connections, all the new ideas that came through. My notepad is full of things that need to be built, and kind of different collaborations, and helping other people with different things. Is just, if you don't know what to do in the space, all it takes is one sacrifice to go to one conference. And even if you have to cross the Atlantic, because it'll be well worth every dollar or Satoshi that you spend. The choice of your spending money is your own. But these places are the true breeding places of new ideas and collaborations. And, most people, a lot of people get kind of scared by the entrepreneurial journey, which, they're like, oh, I don't know how to run a business. And not everybody needs to run their own business. All it takes is meeting another fellow partner that can help do things that you either can't do or find difficult. And then, or you can just, join. All of these companies in this space are looking for new talent, maybe designer, programmer, salesman, marketing executive. Like, there's so many things, so many roles that need to be fulfilled, and roles that most people don't even know have an existence are still yet to be filled. So really, put that proof of work, go out there, meet those people. And these conferences are truly, if you haven't experienced, are kind of the mecca of Bitcoiner heaven, because their time just stops. It's timeless. And the wealth of opportunity that's out there right now, it's a shame, as Brian said, you don't want to be that person 10 years later kind of scratching your back and regretting, oh, why didn't I start a Bitcoin business or going to some way. And it can be as little as one little pleb Gigi starting a What's Your Bitcoin Story podcast. Next month is actually my first year anniversary, and this actually, Brian, is episode 50. So we're doing a big, so to say, milestone here on our end. But you never know where it takes you, and I'm dedicated. I'll put in my proof of work every Thursday. There was a new episode for 1 year straight going through, and I'm not looking to stop anytime soon. I'm really looking forward to do this at least for the next decade. But then we will see longevity-wise how long it will go, because Alex Svetsky, who I had a few months ago, he said kind of in the future, and I'm sure you know of him. He's a fellow Bitcoin author. He said that in the future he doesn't see Bitcoin books or Bitcoin podcasts. He goes, it's going to be kind of dumb. He's like, it's like someone having a podcast that they're writing a book about the internet. Like everybody uses it. Like it doesn't make sense, you know? So I'm kind of milking this 10, maybe max 15-year kind of window of having a Bitcoin stories podcast. Because then, you know, once it's, you know, everywhere, it'll be, you know, it won't have that same jest. It's the same thing as the cheat code. You know, you have the short window. Maybe the cheat code is even shorter than the content base, because we still have, you know, a lot of people to educate and get them on. But you know, time is the scarcest thing apart from Bitcoin. You know, you have, to me, it's time and then it's Bitcoin. So, you know, really make use of the time, because time goes really fast, and you don't want to be regretting anything. So that's my take on meetups. What do you say, Brian?
I think that you're spot on. I mean, meeting in person is incredibly important. That's why I didn't
IRL, as you call it.
IRL. Yeah, I think it's important. We got to make IRL cool again. I mean, it is cool, but it's just we everything's going online. We're able to put more of our lives online, and there's a huge convenience to that. It's allowing you and I to talk right now. This is fun.
Sure.
If this had nothing to do with the mission of Bitcoin or what I do for work or anything like that, I would be sitting here wanting to talk to Bitcoiners anyways. Like that's I think that's what most Bitcoiners want, is they find encouragement and signal in talking to other people that have shared values, and not monolithic though. There's certain values that are shared, and there's certain things that are being discussed and debated, and that's fun. It adds a little flavor to it. But yeah, the in real life side of things is just a little more. It's almost a cheat code for your personal connections, right? Online,
Sure.
everybody's doing online. If that's X, you get X plus Y by having in real life connections. And that's what we're doing at orangepill app. That's the whole reason why the app exists. It's not to be a social media competitor for Twitter or for Nostr or for Facebook or anything like that. It's not social media. There's no feed where you can post things. Your feed is just showing you Bitcoiners that are in your area, or events that are upcoming that are in your area, or merchants that are in your area. So things that you can go to physically in real life
and do on your own instead of just be posting.
Yeah, you can do it on your own. You're not gonna go viral on orangepill app. You can't do that. It's not that kind of tool. Because the model for orangepill app, it's a membership that you pay for. We are not incentivized to keep you in the app endlessly scrolling. You get in, you make the connections, you DM the people you want to DM, or you find the events you want to find. Then you get back out of the app and you get back to productive, better things in your life. We're not trying to suck you into the app so you watch more ads or you click on more ads. That's not how our model works. It's we're the product, and the member pays for it. And so that we're trying to provide as much value or as we can to you. And I think that of all the apps that are on your phone, orangepill app, next to wherever you get or store your Bitcoin, it's probably the most value that we can provide to you, because we're providing other people, like real Bitcoiners,
real Bitcoin connections.
Exactly. Real Bitcoin connections. So whether you care about the mission of the parallel economy, where Bitcoin connections are going to be really important in that, or you just want to have fun, you just want to go to a meetup. I went to a meetup here in Southern California on Thursday that I found through orangepill app. I have Bitcoin friends, people that have been my friends since before Bitcoin, that I was able to orangepill, and I can talk about Bitcoin with them. But it's also fun to meet new Bitcoiners, people I haven't met before. To find people in my area that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know I had neighbors that were into Bitcoin. Well, now that they're signing up for orangepill app, I'm finding that I do have neighbors, people in my city that are into Bitcoin. That's actually a really cool thing. Like, it's very exciting when a new person pops up into your feed, because it means that they're within 10 miles of you, and you're close enough to connect, and that's a really magical thing. And again, whether somebody goes to a conference or it's a local meetup or a one-on-one connection, no matter which route you take, I mean, you're gonna have a preference for one of those. You might not feel comfortable with a one-on-one connection. Then go to a conference. But when you do go to conferences, having a tool like orangepill app is really helpful, because when Michael Saylor goes to a conference, he has dinners and parties and all that stuff, club parties and all that stuff he's going to go to after his 9 to 5 at the conference. But when I show up to a conference, I'm not Mr. Cool Guy. Like I know the conference is from 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are. And I don't know what to do afterwards. But now with Orangepill app, it's really easy to find those events. Oh, there's 10 people getting together at a pub down the street. Let's go down there. There's a Satoshi Nakamoto event. Let's go to that. There's this, there's that. Like you can find all sorts of things. So you get to go to a conference and kind of have the Michael Saylor experience of I went to a conference all day and now I'm going to all the after parties and I'm finding all the events where I can find other people that I didn't know them before, but now we're going to have these connections. I mean, like you said, if you want to work in Bitcoin, going to one of these conferences is a cheat code as well. Walking up to a booth and asking a Bitcoin company, like, hey, what's going on?
Where can I provide value?
Yeah, where can I provide value? That is such a good way to start off and being able to shake their hands and look them in the eye. One of the things we touch on in parallel is that the next era of humanity is going to be disseminating what is real from what is artificial, whether that's intelligence or people. People on the other end of a DM, you might not know if that person's real or not. Now, the cool thing with Orangepill, we have a filtration process for that to verify that people are real. There's a paywall and there's a few other steps that we take for that. But things like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, you just will not know if the other people on the other side of that email message or that DM, if that's a real person or not, because genuinely intelligent artificial bots will be able to connect with you and their time preference will be so low. An AI generated bot will take 2 years to develop a relationship with you just to try and get something out of you, to hopefully discover your key, your seed phrase, or whatever it happens to be. I mean, deepfakes are going to get to the point where, I could, as much as I'm talking to you right now, there's going to be a point where you will not know if I'm an artificial intelligence or, generated video or not. The importance of in real life connections, I think in the next 5 years is going to be the value of that. The value proposition of in real life connections is probably never going to have been higher since the invention of the internet. Since the internet came out, in real life connections will never be more in vogue. And we see this all the time because we follow this because Orangepill app is focused on in real life connections. So people send us tweets from Silicon Valley guys that are talking about this or high profile thinkers in this space because everybody's talking about that. Think about it. When everything goes to AI, when everything goes to artificial, there's going to be a reversion to the organic, to
going back to real, the physical. Yeah.
To the physical. Exactly. And so I think that the next big thing in humanity is going to be connecting with other people in real life.
I love it. This is, like, as you mentioned, it's very strange. The more digital our lives become, the less we even know who our neighbors are. And as you said in your example, by using the Orangepill app, finding, that your neighbor actually is a Bitcoiner. And it's not just like you like the same movie or you like playing tennis. Like meeting another Bitcoiner is like on another frequency level. It's like, wow, suddenly it's like, it's a brother that you didn't know, was around the corner. Like there's so many things you can talk about. And yes. I like to compare it, Brian, as radio frequency. If you're on 98.0 FM and I'm on 21.0 FM, we can't really, synchronize. But then we both go to 21.0 FM and it's just like clarity. And it's like, it's unlimited, pure, joy and clean music. So I love that fact. And we should be having more social interactions. I think there's a lot of also depression and people, losing themselves in this world because they're losing that touch by interacting with other humans, and especially not even going into the topic of media and everything, like, really suppressing you and bombarding you with everything's bad. And, like pretty dark times we live at. Like conversation so far has been all bright and orange, but like if you switch on your 9 p.m. TV and look what's happening there, like it's definitely not that bright. So, it's important to do those choices right. Go out, touch the grass and experience true communication with other fellow beings. And I guess this will lead me to another. I have a few more points that I have that I wanted to run past you, Brian. which is, kind of, we talked so much about Bitcoin for the past hour, this decentralized new money, but now we're kind of transitioning to decentralized communication, maybe through Orange Pill app, but more importantly, which I want to bring upon and bring some more light, especially after the last conference in BTC Prague, Nostr, right? Nostr had its first public booth, and I would say there was about 80 to 90 booths at the expo. It was this huge hall, and Nostr booth was by far the most vibrant one. Every speaker was there. It was just like Nostr was the one to be at. And I wanted to kind of bring up this aspect of Nostr and all the things that are being built in it, and like how new it is. Like it's been just over 2 years that Nostr really kind of came out, and the protocol really started kicking off, and like how many things are already being built in it just 2 years later. And now already having booths at conferences and growing. And I've really tried since the conference to be more active on my Nostr account than my X account, because you never know. I've already, I have a tiny account. I only have a few hundred followers there, but already twice for the last 6 months, my account was restricted. And like, there is zero political stuff that I talk about. Like, I'm a podcast channel, and it's like, oh, we're reviewing your things, and then they took away my blue tick, they brought it back, they took it away, and I'm like, wow, like I'm such a like Nemo in this ocean of big boy accounts, and I'm experiencing this now. I can't imagine having an account with 100,000 people, and then they're like blocking it or freezing it. So I'm like steadily, working my Nostr account, and at some point I can't just yet leave X behind. There's still it's still Bitcoin Twitter for a reason, but like in the future, like I'm really building on and working on my Nostr, because, I feel it's like the early days of Twitter. If you've been building your account like 10 years ago, you've got a big head start compared to other people that are joining Twitter or X as it's called now in 2024.
No, I think that's exactly right. It's the people that are able to look around corners historically are always the ones who benefit. I mean, you just will. You want to give yourself an advantage. Look at what everybody else is doing and figure out a different way to get there. And I think that's what Nostr represents. I mean, it represents a lot of really cool things. But yeah, if you want to just develop a brand somewhere and be at the ground floor, like we said, it was the same argument we made for the parallel economy, right? Adopting something early, especially something that it's not just a new social media, right? It's not like a competitor, a competition to Twitter, or it's not a new X. I mean, because Facebook's tried this, right? You could have, they brought out Threads. I think it's so pathetic. Like Threads was just, they're trying to be this direct competition, and it hasn't taken off. It's just going to cost them a bunch of money. And that's not what Nostr is. It's not a competition in that sense. It represents something new. It represents a decentralized model that is very interesting. It's very intriguing. And I think there's a reason why Bitcoiners are gravitating towards it. And throughout Parallel, I mentioned the importance of Nostr. Having decentralized communications is having those tools in place is really important. And I think I even checklisted. I say we live in an exciting time because we have decentralized money. We have decentralized communication, social media with Nostr, and now the social layer, the in real life connections are more robust than they've ever been. More Bitcoiners are connected in real life than ever. So you have those three things. You have censorship resistant money, censorship resistant communication, and then the ultimate form of censorship resistance is in real life communication, because it's very difficult to censor Bitcoin. It's very difficult to censor Nostr. But at the end of the day, like, if you're going to censor my in real life connections, you have to use the highest form of prejudice. Yeah, you have to put me in prison, and that's not scalable. You can do it to Julian Assange, or you can do it to Ross Ulbricht, but that's not scalable. You can't round every Bitcoiner up because they're in different jurisdictions, and they have different rights and protections, and they, as Bitcoiners, we're kind of inherently these people that are anti-fragile, and so it's just not realistic to do that. And so I think the enemies of Bitcoiners won't really try that hard to do it. They'll try little ways to take pot shots and stuff, but I think ultimately they'll realize that coming after Bitcoin is not a very prudent thing to do. The best thing to do is just to try and use it to get rich in your own way, and that's fine. Like Michael Saylor says, and lots of people have said, Bitcoin's for enemies, and so our enemies will probably at some point benefit from Bitcoin, as we're seeing right now with BlackRock and even the U.S. Man, the U.S. Department of Justice holds a lot of Bitcoin. They've gotten very, very rich off the Bitcoin that they
True.
confiscated, and unfortunately, they get to do that because that's their right to hold Bitcoin. We don't have any power over them. But Nostr plays a really, really important role in that. And so, yeah, I do have a Nostr in pub that I don't use like I should. And it is one of those things. I've been encouraged by friends in the community. It's a re-encouragement from you right now that I do. I need to just it's one of those things. It's like I'm asking people to participate in the parallel Bitcoin economy. I mean it's really easy to participate in Nostr. Just take your content from Twitter and post it over on Nostr, or maybe post it on Nostr first. Make that your primary source and make Twitter X your secondary source. That's fine too. But I think it's low hanging fruit. I think it's something that, yeah, we should work towards progressing these technologies, whether they ultimately work or whether they don't. I think that obviously only the future will tell. But as Bitcoiners, we should be intrigued and fascinated and work towards building these things up to ensure
Yeah.
that they do succeed. Because Bitcoin, it was never guaranteed. It's still not ever. It's still not guaranteed that Bitcoin will succeed. If every Bitcoiner tomorrow says, "I don't really believe in this anymore," then Bitcoin's going to lose value. And it is. It's a form of a belief system. That's how money works. It's subjective value. And
True.
so, yes, if Bitcoiners get behind and believe in Nostr, or if freedom loving people get behind and believe in Nostr, it will flourish. If people don't, it won't flourish. Same thing with Bitcoin. Same thing with any other ideal or anything from history. If people get behind it, the idea of freedom was only pushed by men who wanted freedom. If we didn't push for freedom and liberty, then we would never have freedom and liberty.
True. And,
They're
and
not
talking about
guaranteed.
freedom and liberty, I mean, as you know, in the last 24 hours, Julian Assange was finally pardoned. So I'm waiting for him to come on Nostr and
That
bring
would
the
be
next
crazy.
flock of Nostriches into the ecosystem.
Yes.
Because I think like this is perfectly done for him. And the other thing on Nostr, which most people, disregard it and think, oh, it's just another social media platform. As I mentioned, it's not a platform, it's a protocol, right? So when you get your NPub and your and your security pub, you essentially have control over your data. So even if you get censored on one client, you can just retract it and go to another client, maybe iOS, Android, or whatever, and you have full control. Your data is there, which is super powerful stuff. It's the same thing that we've been preaching with Bitcoin, right? That nobody can essentially confiscate it or freeze it from you. But of course, if you lose it, or if you kind of like how you don't have a double spend concept in Bitcoin, you also don't have a delete option in Nostr. So think twice before you post a note, because there's no delete button.
Yes.
And I actually been experiencing this. So I'm slightly dyslexic, so sometimes like I type quickly and I post in, then I
Yep.
edit my Telegram messages or Twitter posts. And now in Nostr, I'm like realizing, I'm like, oh shit, like I was too fast to click that send button. Like now it's done forever. But hey,
Yep.
it's no biggie. At least it shows that it's not a deep fake, right? That it's still a human doing it. So it's got
That's right.
some approval on it. But I wanna bring one mention of Nostr, of a fascinating project that I've been privileged to be invited to, and I think you're gonna love it, Brian. And I want to kind of, this is the first time I'm bringing it up on the podcast. It's been some months in the working, and actually in Prague it was officially announced. It's a project called Setlantis.io. Have you heard of Setlantis, Brian?
I have. Yeah, it's Alex Svetsky's project, correct?
Correct. Yes. So Alex Vetsky, which we've been in a lot of communications with since last October when we met in Amsterdam, once again at a Bitcoin conference by Bitcoin Magazine. He messaged me a few months ago, and he asked me if I want to be one of the ambassadors for the city, because he knew I was based in Cyprus. And I said, Alex, I would love to, but actually I'm planning to move next month to Russia. And he was like, oh my God, like I'd love to have someone there, because like nothing's really happening there with Bitcoin. So he was like, man, I'd love you to be an ambassador there. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And there's been a lot of things cooking. And the amazing thing with Atlantis is it kind of, for people that are just first time hearing it, it's think of kind of your nomadic tool for people that use TripAdvisor, that use Google Maps, that use kind of reviews to whenever they go to a new city. You kind of rely on other people's reviews. And if you're reading a review of, let's say, a house mom who likes spaghetti, but you're allergic to carbs, it doesn't make sense to be reading those reviews. So by Bitcoiners giving their reviews of places, where to eat, where to stay, what to see in the city. It's like having a Bitcoiner friend that you haven't met yet. And the amazing thing with integrating and getting the merchants, which I think, I'm not sure if you know about this, Brian, but you're going to love this, because essentially the maps that is getting integrated into Satlantis, they got the Google Maps API, and they're basically putting all the merchants that are already on Google Maps on the Satlantis map. But the amazing thing is, for a merchant to get their profile up, all it takes is for them to claim their store. So basically, they need to log into their Google account. There's some like reference, I don't know, some like identifier button. They just claim that on their Nostr account, and instantly they get their XPub, they get their Lightning wallet, everything set up. They don't need to know nothing about Bitcoin. And it's like, all they have to do is claim it. So going back to my barbershop example, like I really want to get them on the Satlantis map as the first barbershop. And like, it'll be so easy to get them set up with their own, Lightning wallet, their own Nostr account and everything. And then we'll get these BTC Pay server. I'll get them a nice POS system so they can they're in good hands. So like I'll do all of the load work just so they can smoothly enter into the parallel social layer. But yeah, I mean, things like this, like Satlantis, which I see so many perspectives on, I see it as, and Alex still to this day, he's like, I don't really know. I don't have a name to describe it. Like everyone, and he was asking us when we had actually the following day after BTC Prague, we had a Satlantis brunch in the city center of Prague, which was beautiful. And I was actually the first day and my last day to actually see the city center, because I was just 4 days of marathon conference. And we had a nice panel. He got some ambassadors out. I was also one of them there. And the first question kind of he asked all of us was like, how would you describe Satlantis? And I described it as your Bitcoin home away from home. So, wherever you go in the world, you're kind of always looking for these Bitcoiners. And of course, the Orange Pill app was kind of the trendsetter and the main place where you can actually meet physical Bitcoiners and make these connections. But on top of that, I think with Satlantis, it's incredible that, Bitcoiners can exchange things and share value with each other. And it's an open protocol, right? There's no, fees to pay. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with it. Actually, I like the model that Orange Pill app has, that you have to pay to get in, because if not, you would have a flock of bots, and people don't really appreciate something if it's free. So, if you have to put a little bit of money, and it's not like you're asking for $100, like, I don't even know what, I'm sure that the fee for Orange Pill app is as much as a grande caramel latte in Starbucks nowadays. So it's not like you're getting skint. You can miss on one latte, guys. Don't worry, the world's going to be the same. So I think there's parallels like that, and this is just one project that I'm super fascinated about and really, kind of putting time and energy and I really want this to flourish. But there's so many other projects that are being built now, and there's anything you can put your mind to, anything you wanna create, you're free to do that. So I'm really kind of urging everybody that's listening to go out and build on Bitcoin. Maybe the base layer, maybe layer 2s, maybe Nostr, maybe whatever it is. Just take action now, because there's no better time, and you don't want to be that person in 10, 15 years time regretting and saying, why didn't I listen to Brian and Gigi? Like maybe they had some truth in that.
Yeah. Amen, man. That's great. No, I think that I was at the meetup I was at on Thursday. The one of the gentlemen there he's like, have you seen all the apps for Nostr? And he took me to nostrapps. I think it's nostrapps.com. And it's pretty. Is that what it is?
I think so. Nostrplebs.com.
Oh, Nostrplebs. Okay.
Yeah.
Nostrplebs.com. And he was showing me just all the apps that are on there, and like the different functionality that you can do. It's incredible. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of overlap between what Satlantis and Orange Pill app are doing. Great. That's amazing. Like BTC Maps. I give them a shout out in the book. they're competitive.
Nathan's amazing.
Yeah, we have merchants on Orange Pill app, and BTC Maps has merchants there too. I do not care. I want Bitcoiners to connect. And so if there's more tools, and there's Yahoo and Google and Yelp all list businesses on those are all competing platforms. But ultimately for the business, that just means more people are able to find those businesses. So if more Bitcoiners can find Bitcoin businesses because it's listed on, it's listed on Satlantis, and it's listed on Orangepill app, and it's listed on BTC Maps. That's great. That means that we can pretty much guarantee that Bitcoiners are going to find those businesses. So if your Bitcoin business is if you're accepting Bitcoin, put it out there. You're going to amplify the cheat code the more places that you can put it. I know there's other websites that list Bitcoin businesses just kind of randomly as well. Find every website that does that so every Bitcoiner can find you. We're not building these tools because we're trying to, make buku bucks off of it.
Monopolize that. These are our people. No, it's the country.
Well, it's not our people. It's because every Bitcoiner has aligned incentives. If we can make Bitcoin, if we can bring about hyper Bitcoinization, I will directly benefit from that. My Bitcoin holdings will become more valuable. There's a financial incentive for me to do this, and it's not just by signing up members and getting them to pay them out. That's to fund the operations and to fund the building and things like that, so that we can accomplish our mission. If Satlantis and Orangepill app and BTC Maps accomplish this mission, if one wins out and the others aren't as efficient, that's fine. We're still accomplishing hyper Bitcoinization. We get there. You benefit from it. I benefit from it, and every single merchant benefits from it as well. I don't care how we get there. I just want to get there.
I totally agree. And this is kind of one thing that people from the legacy markets, they find it hard to believe. They're like, how are you guys not competing? Like, how are you not rivals? We're essentially all in the same boot camp and kind of building win-win solutions. Because if I can help you prosper, you're helping me in return kind of move forward higher. And mentioning BTC Maps and Nathan, he was actually one of the people at the brunch, and he was asking a lot of questions, and he was like, how do we do this, that, here, so like it's amazing to see, people from the industry collaborating, exchanging ideas, and the best thing about kind of what we're doing with Satlantis, which Alex mentioned, it's kind of everything is out in the open. So like there's a lot of bugs, like as he says, everything's broken now, but like he's like, that's the beauty of it, because everybody can contribute, give their feedback, and we can build something together and kind of develop it in the ways that we want to use it, instead of, a company working on secretly something for 2-3 years. And then it's like, bam, keynote, big announcement. We've developed this. And then like people are like, oh, but why is this like this? I don't like that. I want to change that. So, the beauty of open source and just FOSS projects is, the collaboration and building things together, which is amazing. So I think those are more or less the points that I did want to bring on this show. We can go into many more things in the book that I read, but I don't want to spoil it more for other people. I encourage, like I did in the beginning, for everybody to go out and get a copy, because you will love the book. And if you don't, come back to me and I'll refund you some sats. I put my money where my mouth is. I'm sure there won't be any disappointments, but if there are, come talk to me, and I'm sure we'll work it out for you. But as I do with all guests, Brian, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with? I mean, we've dropped so many here, but like if there's one takeaway, what is that takeaway that you would leave the listeners with?
I would just touch on what we talked about at the beginning of the show, and maybe it's kind of a recurring theme, but I mean, it's the theme of the episode, so I'll close with it as well. And I'll make one of the points that we make at the end of Parallel in that chapter that we talked about. Every day is election day. Every day is.
Oh, the quote's coming up, by the way. I didn't forget.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's not the last paragraph or the last two paragraphs, but the point of that chapter again is not to make a political point. The reason why every day is election day. Every 4 years or every 2 years or every November here in the United States is election day. Yeah. But that only comes up so often. The reason why we say every day is election day is because you have the choice to vote with your time, your attention, your money every single day. And I think that the equivalency that we make, or the binary that we make there, is that political votes, some people still think they're important. I would say, if we have any influence over the system, go ahead and still exert that system. You get somebody like G Money and G Money from Badlands Media, he'd say, no, opt out, don't even vote for the system. So I certainly respect that perspective as well. But I would say, go ahead and vote if you want. But think about it like this. In a political vote, if there's 100 million votes in an election and 51% of the vote goes to politician A, it doesn't matter that 49 million people voted no against that politician. Tomorrow, he still gets 100% of the power. He only got 51% of the votes, but he gets 100% of the power. So those 49 million votes ultimately meant nothing the very next day. But in an economic vote, the example we use in the book is Budweiser. That was a very, very prominent thing here in the United States, is that they put a trans activist on the can, and a lot of the Budweiser demographic didn't particularly like that. Some of them didn't mind, so some people still bought Budweiser. But let's say they did $100 million in sales the year before. Well, the next year, if they do $51 million in sales, or they got 51 million votes from their customers still, guess what? Those 49 million votes that they didn't get of dollars, those hurt. That truly impacts them and their bottom line. So economic votes are vastly more influential and powerful than political votes. And that's why socialism and communism doesn't work. Where capitalism, you're constantly getting feedback on the system by voting with dollars. In a market system, things are constantly being voted for. The things in society that work get voted on, and that's why they're profitable. And the things that don't work in society, they don't. It's like an evolutionary process. It's survival of the fittest. Those things die away because nobody wanted them. Nobody paid money for them. And that's what we have in front of us today, is we have the power to opt out of the old system. And like I said at the beginning, every vote against the existing system has the power of two, because it's a minus vote from the existing system, but it's a +1 vote for the new parallel system. So again, I reiterate that just because it's a simple fact that every one of us today can actually take at least one step towards disempowering the existing system and empowering the new parallel system that we want. And I think the good news here, and I like to keep it on an optimistic note, some of the podcasts that I've done recently, like I did one with Safety, and people were like, wow, you went so doom and gloom. I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I actually think it's an optimistic outlook. So I'm taking a very rosy lens to things today. But I don't think that society, I mean, the way that the fiat system's been built up, it really should have an absolute destructive crash landing. But the good news here is that if we build out a parallel system that's robust enough, society around the world might have a relatively soft landing. Because instead of supply chains and local economies just crashing and being disorganized and people trying to survive, there's already a parallel system that works very efficiently, and we get to just transition right over to that. This might be the most beautiful transition of power in history that humanity's ever seen. It's going to be a welcomed transition of power, but that system will only be robust enough to handle that if we're building it right now. And so every one of us that's listening to this has the power to contribute to that. That meme about, Grandpa, what did you do when Bitcoin, was being built? I spent a few sats. It's like freaking legend, like he's a total legend. He just spent a few sats. So if we can do that today, feel free to read that quote. And by the way, if anybody posts quotes from the book or posts content from the book, I love that. That's great. I don't care. I love that. When people buy the book, it definitely helps support the mission and getting out there and sharing it more. If anybody just is like, I don't have money to spend. I mean, we have people that watch shows and follow on Twitter that live in developing nations and stuff. I'll send you a PDF of the book for free. I don't care. This isn't about selling a couple books. This is about forwarding the ideas and spreading the message. And so, yeah, if that's ever a situation somebody finds themselves in, feel free to DM me, and I will send you a free copy of the ebook. That's not a problem. So by all means, I love when people share concepts and ideas from the book. Go for it.
That's amazing, and I praise you for it, Brian, because as you mentioned, there's so many people that that really can't make their ends meet, and especially in developing countries, that spending $10, $20 on a book is a huge cost. And actually, I've had and I believe it's, what is the date today? Tuesday. So in 2 days, Seb Bunny's episode is coming out. So the author of The Hidden Cost of Money, and he said the exact same thing. He said, if anybody wants a copy, just email me and I'll send you a PDF version of it. It's all about spreading the money and educating the people more than making a buck and kind of facilitating and making the riches on my own. So that's super nice. And yeah, I will conclude to add to what you already mentioned, Brian, as I said in the beginning, because I found this ending was perfect. So listen up, guys. Every day is election day and every vote matters. Every decision you make is an economic one. You're either paying money for something or you're paying attention to it. Both are currency. It is an ambitious pursuit that we seek. but those who are ambitious enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Amen. I mean, Brian, what a book once again, and what a pleasure having you on the podcast and actually speaking to you, because I've been following you for some time. But what I love about the medium that I'm doing is I get to speak to the people I look up to and have a full blown friendly conversation. And I just happen to record it and share it with the world and hopefully future generations that will listen back to the early days of Bitcoin and Bitcoin economies. But yeah, I mean, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. Where can we send our listeners to follow you? I guess X, but also your website.
Yeah. Reach out to me through X or Orangepill app. I mean, I'm more responsive on Orangepill app.
Orangepill app.
In the DMs, but I mean, yeah, if people comment on stuff, then I try to get back to the comments on X. I promise I will be more active on Nostr. I know that's one of those things that I need to invest more time into. None of us have got this thing dialed down. I'm always, like I said, a huge proponent of this parallel system, and there's areas where I'm even lacking. I'm certainly pushing certain things forward, but there's areas that I, just like everybody, we can grow in discipline and things. And I think the fruit will be there. So I will be more responsive on on Nostr. But then, yeah, if anybody wants to go to, touch base with other Bitcoin, just go to the orangepill.app.link. Super easy to sign up. Please, if you're a merchant, get on there. Sign up for a merchant account on there. Same thing. Go on Satlantis. Put your Bitcoin business on there. Make it so people can find you. Make it so that the cheat code is very real in your life. I hope and pray that Bitcoin businesses flourish and other people see, wow, why is Joe the plumber? Why is he killing it? Well, it's because he has a bunch of Bitcoin customers and he's not only accepting Bitcoin, but Bitcoin at some point is going to be going through the roof. And so every Bitcoin you accept, it's like, wow, I accepted it yesterday for $50 of services. Now it's worth $75 and I didn't even do anything other than just hold it. It's going to snowball. We haven't had any of that effect yet. I mean, we have had a lot of that effect. Bitcoin's gone up 100% in the last year, but it hasn't had this like FOMO cycle. When it hits that FOMO, that euphoria cycle for people, guys, the parallel economy and everything around this space is going to be set on fire, like in this very positive way. Like it's going to be like a rocket ship. And I'm not trying to use this like, to the moon idea, but it does. It has that feeling that when things go, they're going to go. And the people who were here pushing these things forward, investing their time in it, other people will recognize that. People will see that you've been around and you've been contributing and participating, and you will benefit a great deal from that. So thank you guys. Thank you, Gigi, for having me on the show, man. This was fun. I would do this, like you said, just for kicks. So please, I hope we can do it again. I hope
for sure.
Maybe I hope I don't have to wait till episode 100, but I hope I get to come back for another milestone.
No, for sure. I was going to say, Brian, so I didn't mention, I give open invites to all of our guests. And as the name of the show is, What's Your Bitcoin Story? The beautiful thing is our stories are only getting started. So there's more things happening. So as we progress and perhaps your next book or whenever you want to come up and talk some topics, feel free to let me know. And I would love to have you back and talk more things that we didn't get to discuss in this episode. So once again, thanks a lot, Brian. And remember, guys, save in Bitcoin, spend your fiat, because it's much nicer accumulating wealth than losing your wealth and having it melt away every day. So I hope you learned something from this episode, and we look forward to having you back on very soon. All the best, Brian.
Peace.